Campanelli, Cook County Public Defender. She's awesome. Wendell Robinson. He works with us at Restore Justice. They're the best. So here's the thing. I was going to do a setup, but I'm not going to now. Because why? Wendell. So Wendell is a person who I've come to love very much, and in a very short period of time. So the first time, Wendell, you and I met, where did we meet?
Menard Visiting Room.
Menard Correctional Center Visiting Room.
Yes.
And where were you a couple of years ago? Where were you this day, December 12th, 2 years ago?
I was in Cook County Jail.
What were you doing there?
I was waiting to get resentenced.
And tell us the story. Tell us the story of how you got to the point where you got a sentence in the first place and then got resentenced.
Well, I'm from Chicago. I'm from the West Side, the Lawndale community. I grew up in the 80s, early 90s. And those of you that's from Chicago, you know what we experienced in the 80s and early 90s was some would consider a crack epidemic. And that crack epidemic hit my neighborhood in the late 80s, early 90s, a time when I was a ripe, impressionable teen. And by me being impressionable, I partook in the crack trade. And in that crack trade, it became extremely lucrative. And when you have lucrative businesses, you have to protect it. And a certain level of violence that comes along with, that business. And I ended up selling a lot of drugs, in my community. And while I was selling those drugs, I believe in the early part of July of 1992, a lot of my property came up missing. And it's like when you live in that lifestyle, it's a situation where in the streets, you talk, don't let nobody take nothing from you. I mean, how silly it is now, in hindsight, all the other silliness that you do that's glorified, if it's just spending your money recklessly, not saving your money, but you talk not to let no one take anything from you. And my property came up missing. I did a pseudo investigation and found out who I thought had took my property, and myself and some other individuals drove to where that person was known to hang out, and I identified who it was that took my property. And he got shot multiple times, so he ended up dying from his gunshot wounds, and I was immediately identified as individual of interest in that case. Shortly after, I was arrested, and ultimately ended up being convicted for identifying someone that had who I thought had took some property of mine.
But you were convicted of murder, right?
Yes, I was convicted of murder.
And Amy, help us out here. So somebody like Wendell, who wasn't an actual, he pointed somebody out, we would think of that maybe as an accessory or something like that. But in Illinois law, what happened that he got convicted of murder?
Well, he was a juvenile, and I believe you said you were how old at the time, Wendell?
17.
17, so you were still considered a juvenile, but you were tried as an adult.
Absolutely.
And therefore you were looking at a life sentence, and you got a life sentence for your participation, perhaps not as the shooter, but as being legally responsible for the people who did commit the shooting.
So this is one of the things we fight, right?
Right.
Absolutely.
And what I'm wondering, Amy is, and I'm guessing, Wendell, you don't look and act now the same way you did when you were 17. What were you like at 17 when you were in the courtroom? Were you angry?
I was ignorant. I'm thinking at 17, 18 years old, I got charged with murder that I know I didn't commit. I'm thinking that, I wasn't gonna get convicted. Me, when I say ignorant, I didn't know the workings of the law.
You were a child. Let's not forget that. You were a child. And you're a child until probably 24, 25, maybe even older, depending on where you come from, depending on how you grew up, right? If you grew up with trauma your whole life, you might not be an adult till even later. You were a child, and you were sentenced to an adult sentence, as if because you committed an adult crime, you should be treated as an adult. You don't magically become an adult because of the crime you committed, right? You're still a child, and you should have been treated as a child. And that's why the work here is so important.
And Amy, I know you work in Cook County, but I'm sure you speak with colleagues around the state. Would this have happened to a white kid? I mean, it does sometimes, I know, but it's just in general, in other counties and other parts of the state, is this a race thing?
Well, I'll tell you what happened in the 80s and 90s, because that's when I was doing most of my work. I've been a lawyer since 87. And, when we were working during the epidemic, the drug war, and people, including legislators and people around the country, were calling kids super predators, that they were irredeemable, that they need to be even treated harsher than an adult. Harsher than someone whose brain might have developed and might have understood the consequences of their actions, where Wendell didn't understand that pointing someone out might get him a murder conviction when he didn't even fire the gun. So, then in the 80s and 90s, and I say this because I was an assistant public defender, and we had black and brown people we represented. And when the white kid came in and did the exact same thing, everybody wanted to try and help that child or that adult. Everybody wanted to say, well, he's not going to go to prison. We're going to put him on probation. Prosecutors, judges, public defenders, private attorneys. We were all doing this together. The system was, and continues to be completely racist. I've been in the system 32 years. We treat people of color differently, people who are poor, people who are from disadvantages, neighborhoods differently than those who are affluent. And it's a shame, it's disgusting, it's abhorrent, and I hope that we're trying to do something up here. And I just want to say, this is a story of second chances. You heard those 3 letters? They're amazing, those letters that we just heard from people in the penitentiary. These men are worthy. They are smart. They have something to offer. That one gentleman's been in solitary almost 30 years. Could any of us ever survive that and come out and be as strong and wonderful as that letter that you heard? I mean, that's unbelievable. We have to think of people in prison as worthy of everything that we can give them, and not just of, maybe you say second chances, but many of my clients never had a first chance. Did Wendell have a first chance in
Want to comment on that, Wendell? You look like you're ready. You got stuff to say.
I do. I didn't have a first chance. I come from a neighborhood where, poverty was common and crime ran rampant. So, with those 2 elements, that's all that I seen. That's what I gravitate toward. Not knowing, like I said earlier, just being ignorant, to how a system works and how when you get trapped in the system, how hard it is to get out. I think my grandma used to tell me, trouble is easy to get into, but it's hard to get out. And trouble could come in the form of just, making a bad mistake.
So we talk a lot about mistakes and about individuals when we talk about second chances, and when we started talking about race and poverty, we're talking about communities and systems. We're not just talking about individuals and choices, and it's one of the reasons why we take the policy approach, and everything we do is targeted toward changing the policies that keep the system in place. So I'm going to ask you a last question. I hate to do this. It's a last question because we have to keep moving, and we're running a little behind, and we're going to cut out a little bit more. And I'm sorry. I love you.
It was really good.
And I love your time. It was really good stuff. You're missing out. Come back next year.
Please.
Really, please. So Wendell, when we were talking earlier before the event, we were talking about how when we were talking about race, that sometimes when we talk about it, we're super explicit about it. But unlike a lot of the guys who've been coming out with, there have been 22 men and no women yet who've come home because of the Miller versus Alabama decision. Most of them didn't go right back to their own community. They went to a reentry program, a halfway house, Iman, St. Leonard's, one of these wonderful places. But Wendell, you went home. You went back to your community. And so we have these conversations. Is this a conversation you're hearing in your community, or is this different?
It's not a common conversation because I live in a community where a lot of people don't understand what poverty really is. They don't understand that it's a mentality. It's and it's been systemically put in place. And it's like, how do you combat an enemy that you don't know is formed? So you have people that really don't know that they're living in poverty, and it's like we always heard, ignorance is bliss. But now, me being aware, awareness can hurt. When you're aware how something works, it can hurt. And then especially I'll go back to the community that I was born and raised in. I'm there, on a regular, and just to see, how it does change. If it's just the neighborhood feel, but no, these conversations are not had because a lot of people they don't even know that they actually in poverty.
Yeah, and I think I'm going to close with a question to Amy to bring us very quickly home, which is, we are in an incredible moment right now in Illinois. We've got a progressive governor. We have leadership in folks like Senator Harmon. We have leadership in folks like Representative Slaughter. We have lieutenant governor who's focused, and there's been progress. I know Kim Foxx expunged 1,000 marijuana convictions yesterday. We had nothing to do with that, by the way. We don't work on pot. But
I was in the courtroom. They didn't do it.
But Amy, we see the progress on the low-level offenses and on what quote-unquote nonviolent offenses, and everything we've heard about today is in that other category that people don't like talking about. So before we close up the program with Ginny Gorgeous and myself, I'm going to hold your hand, Ginny. I'm going to stand right next to you and hold your hand. Don't worry. We're going to close up the program. I want you to give us some advice. Give this room of people some advice of how to take advantage of this moment.
Well, I think that people who are in the audience who work in the communities, and even if you don't, whatever community you live in, you need to have these conversations with people around you at your dinner table, whether or not you're attending an event at your church, at your school board, about people who live in the communities who are getting long sentences, staying in a prison system, right, that is not rehabilitative. You heard it today. We all know that when you go to prison, you're locked up, your liberty's taken. So why can't we rehabilitate you while you're in prison? There's a gentleman crying out. He's going to be home in a year and a half. He hasn't been given any services. What do you think is going to happen to that human being when he comes home? We've been doing it wrong for decades. This is nothing, I'm not shocking any of you. You know that. We've been doing it wrong. We need to stop bringing people into the system on the front end, and we need to help them if they are in the system in the middle, and when they come home. It's easy if we all wrap our arms around these folks. I'm trying to do some good work by being at police stations to stop abuses that happen at police stations, to walk people out of police stations at the beginning so they don't come into the system. And I'll say since my forum is, I'm a system holder, right? I'm part of the system that has been racist and horrible and treated people horribly for decades. Those of us who are in that space must make change. There is no way you can sit on your platform and not do what is needed to be done. It's hard work. What you did up in Lake County is hard work, but it can be done. People would never have thought we would be in this space, a few years ago. And have those conversations, educate people about what's really happening in the system. Be a mentor, like Don Harmon said, and Mr. Gaynor, be a mentor to someone in your system and help people like Wendell when they come home.
Thank you both.